abandon free market principles to save the free market system.
In a world of conventional confusion,
there will be time for them to make profits. Now's not that time.
Daddy, what do taxes pay for?
Oh, why, everything. Policemen, trees, sunshine. And let's not forget the folks who just don't feel like working, God bless them.
Don't be afraid of your freedom.
Prepare to unshackle your mind.
An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army or any government.
Your professor has arrived. Tom Woods. Beware, citizen, you are now departing from the world of allowable opinion. The Tom Woods Show.
Welcome, everybody. It's Thursday, June 26th, 2014. Today we're talking to Brian McClanahan, an old friend of mine for a number of years now, the author of several books, including The Founding Fathers' Guide to the Constitution, The Politically Incorrect Guide to the Founding Fathers, and the book we'll be talking about today, of which he is the co-author, Forgotten Conservatives in American History. Brian wrote this with Clyde Wilson, who is the editor of the Calhoun Papers and is considered to be one of the great living historians of the American South. As a matter of fact, Eugene Genovese, who was himself one of the great Southern historians of the 20th century, said that Clyde is certainly in the top 10 in that category. And Brian was actually Clyde's last PhD student. So Clyde's a great guy, extremely knowledgeable, as is Brian. Brian also teaches U.S. history with me over at libertyclassroom.com, which you can get a seriously big chunk of a discount at by using coupon code DISCOUNT in all caps at libertyclassroom.com. You can get 60% off at libertyclassroom.com when you become a supporting listener of the show. You get transcripts of all the interviews. You get discounts at Liberty retailers all over the place, plus 60% off at libertyclassroom.com. Become a supporting listener at supportinglisteners.com. Now, let's get to Brian McClanahan. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tom. Appreciate it.
As I was flipping through this book, which I've had for some time now, it occurred to me that this is material for multiple shows. Because instead of covering a whole bunch of people 30 seconds at a time, I think we should take them and give them the treatment they deserve, because they're all interesting in one way or another. And
sure.
I was, before we went on, we were talking about which ones of these people would be most interesting perhaps for the audience, and maybe we get started with those. And you had exactly the thoughts that I did. I was thinking about Sumner and Cleveland. So let's get started talking about them. I would bet a good chunk of this audience knows at least the name William Graham Sumner. So give us the background on Sumner, and then we'll talk about what it was that he thought and the sorts of forbidden opinions that he uttered.
Right. Well, I mean, Sumner was, in so many ways, in my opinion, the best sociologist in American history. I mean, you hear that term sociologist, and immediately your eyes are going to roll back. Oh, no.
Yeah, and if he's the best one in American history, talk about the faintest praise in the history of the world.
Right, because everyone thinks sociologists are all just these. They've all had a sociology class where it's this cultural Marxist who comes in and tells you, whatever they think they believe about that. So you have Sumner, who's a sociologist, but he was great. I mean, here's a guy that was just the epitome of the antithesis of whatever you think of sociologists are today. And his positions on the economy, on war, on politics, society, I mean, they're refreshing. And you go out and you think, this guy was a sociologist? I mean, my gosh. And he was writing at a time in the late 19th century when you had progressivism just really taking hold of America, and he was so much against it. And the great thing about Sumner is that actually at one point, I think that because of Sumner, people thought progressivism is dead because he ripped it apart so easily. And then it has this resurgence, of course, in the early 20th century. But Sumner is just this great classical liberal. And I know we call the book is, Forgotten Conservatives, but Sumner is more accurately a classical liberal who, or a libertarian in many ways, that was very concerned about the power of the state and, of course, the expansion of the state in terms of the economy and, of course, war as well, and what that would do to what he called forgotten man, the individual who's being left behind in all of this stuff.
Let's talk about, I want to get to the forgotten man later, Let's talk about an essay Sumner wrote, The Conquest of the United States by Spain. A very interesting essay and a very cutesy kind of title because, of course, the reader will think to himself, well, I don't recall the United States having been conquered by Spain. What could this madman have in mind? What does he mean by that? It's perhaps not meant to be so literal.
Right, absolutely. Of course, he wrote that essay at the conclusion or about the time of the Spanish-American War, and the United States won. So how are you saying that the United States is conquered by Spain? We won the war. What are you talking about? Well, he was saying, look, okay, yeah, we won the war, but what happened? What we did through this war was pervert the American tradition, which was anti-imperialism. Now we've become this imperialist country. We've gone out and acquired colonies. We've acquired Cuba and Guam and Puerto Rico. We've acquired these places, and so in the Philippines, we've essentially become just like Spain in the 16th and 17th centuries. We have become an international or world power through imperialist motives, and so he was taking America to task for this, the American foreign policy leaders, and saying, this is wrong. What we're doing here is destroying everything we've built up to 1898. Now, I think you could contend that the United States had some imperialist motives at other times in history, but he's saying at this point we've turned the corner. We're no longer what we used to be. We're now just like Spain, and that is to be not loved or admired. It's something we should be just opposing completely. So that's why that little cutesy title works, and it's such a powerful essay. If you haven't read it, I mean, you should go out and read that. It should be one of the top essays to read in terms of anti-imperialism in the United States.
You know what? Offhand, I can't remember if gosh, this is what happens when you get to be my age. First of all, when you get to be my age, you get to start saying when you get to be my age. I can't remember if we used any portion of that essay in our book, We Who Dared to Say No to War. If we did, I'm glad we did. And if we didn't, the only reason we wouldn't have is that I would feel like it was a bit hackneyed at this point because everybody's read it. But, there's always a point in somebody's life where he hasn't read even a classic essay. You have to provide these things to people, so shame on me if I didn't. What does he mean by the forgotten man?
Well, forgotten man is the guy that's been left behind because essentially what you have in society when you get to a plutocracy, which is what he was saying America was, is you have one class getting the benefits, the wealthy, and then you would have in a sociological or socialism construct, you would have another section, the poor, ostensibly getting benefits, and the people in the middle are left behind in this entire process. So you have the rich always going for their own interests, and of course, because of democracy, they're going to oftentimes pander to the poor to give them their interest, but in the middle, everyone else is getting taxed to death. They're not getting any benefits from the system. They're being destroyed. And so that's what he said. This is the forgotten man. The man essentially that goes out, pays his taxes, works a job, does everything that he's supposed to do, yet he's getting hit from both ends of the system and getting nothing out of it.
Let's shift to Grover Cleveland. If you ask libertarians in particular for favorite presidents, well, generally they'll roll their eyes and say, I don't want to talk about my favorite politicians, for heaven's sake, of all the possible things you could ask me. But if you really, really press, you usually get a handful, and Cleveland is in that handful. What is it that makes Cleveland, what you call him in this chapter title, the last Jeffersonian president?
Well, I think Cleveland, in reality, and I believe he was really the last. I mean, you can make a case for maybe Coolidge or Reagan, but he really was the last conservative president we had in the founding tradition in the United States. And that's because Cleveland looked at the office the way that the founding generation looked at the office. For example, when he came into office, you had the Republicans controlling Congress, or at least for years, and they had been doing all kinds of things, unconstitutional legislation. And he came in and used the veto as the founding generation intended it, as a wrecking ball against unconstitutional legislation. So the Congress was passing what he was vetoing mostly were pension bills. And he was saying these things are completely unconstitutional, so he vetoed them. And, of course, the Congress would go irate about this stuff, go bonkers that he was doing this. But he issued more vetoes than anyone combined before him. So he's vetoing all this legislation because it was unconstitutional. He believed in sound money. He believed in free trade, a limited central authority. So all the things that we talk about that made the first five presidents, for the most part, very good, was what Cleveland was trying to do. And he was anti-imperialist. So this guy really personified that Jeffersonian tradition in the late 19th century, and he was the last one to do